I'm Chuck. Let's get some names before we even get started. Chuck tried to introduce me to you guys. I'm gonna forget your names throughout the day, but I'll do the best we can. I'll tell you what, this is a big bunch of dudes. Yeah, man. I used to not be the smallest person in the room, but at my biggest I would be the smallest person in this room. I suffer from height issues. So let's go around and get your names, guys. And you know what? Let's do a little introduction and just tell me, like, I don't know, how long you've been training, what your goals are. You know, maybe it looked like all you guys power lift, but maybe we got somebody in here with some secondary goal other than powerlifting. That's fine too. And maybe like your biggest, your biggest concern. Like maybe you have some injury that you try to work around, or some health issue. You don't have to reveal your most private health concerns, but name, lifting experience, goals, and maybe biggest takeaway you want today out of this thing. And if you forget something, I'll try to prompt you, but I think I've forgotten them already. So,
my name's Jim. I've been lifting since I was 15. My goal's like a 2,000 combined, all three.
where are you right now?
Like 15.
Okay,
12.
that's a ways off.
In between.
Okay.
Yeah, it's quite a bit.
Okay.
I don't know what else.
Any like injury history or any big concerns
I
like that?
blew 2 discs out in my back, but I think my goal is now trying to figure out deadlifting, whether
Yeah.
I'm gonna just sumo or conventional.
We'll look at your form today. Just
Yeah.
like remind me, we got to sort it out.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm Kane. I've been lifting since 8th grade. Powerlifting the whole time. It's always been my focus. I took some time off, but no real physical injuries. And I don't know. Just trying to get big and strong.
Keep
Really.
getting strong.
Yeah.
How old are you, Ken?
27.
It's Jim, right?
Yep.
How old are you?
32.
32. You guys got ways to go, man. I'm 53. Go ahead.
I'm Jared. I've been lifting for like about 8 years now. In the beginning, I was doing like more bodybuilding type stuff, and then I came here and they kind of like lifted heavy, and I was like, all right, the whole powerlifting. Yeah, pretty much. And I wanted to just, I always enjoyed the whole powerlifting aspect to it, so I wanted to just do it and to get better at it. In terms of injuries, I haven't really had any, but I don't know. I just want to learn like other movements to get me stronger and better in those those 3 because.
And how old did you say you are?
27.
27. So what I was saying earlier, that bodybuilding foundation that some of you guys come with, that was one of the mistakes I made. I played football in high school and lifted mainly for sports, but so I didn't really ever do any bodybuilding, and I think like my muscle mass suffered for that. I was always just like a 3 rep max, 1 rep max guy, and so I had a good nervous system. The muscle I had, I could use pretty well, but I think especially with your accessory lifts, so like, okay, whatever, you've gone heavy on your squat or your bench, and those accessories, it's easier on your body to keep those reps up and keep the weight a little bit lighter, and B, you build some muscle that you can then work to make stronger. So I like that bodybuilding foundation that some guys have. I wish I'd have had that more as a young guy, but it's just not how I got into training.
I'm Dom, been training for like 2 years. My goal is just to improve on all 3 lifts, squat, deadlift, and bench. So
How old are you, Dom?
I'm only 25.
You look strong as shit, man.
He put it on like instantly.
Yeah.
He started with us, we all started together.
I was 160 pounds when I started. I'm 205 now. So.
Any athletic background going
Yeah,
back?
track and field and basketball.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, cool. I know I met you, but
Yeah, my name's Caleb. I started lifting probably 8th or 9th grade, just dabbling in it. I did bodybuilding primarily, higher rep kind of stuff. And then kind of like Rose, when I came here, like he got me into powerlifting.
and you were a sprinter in school.
I was a sprinter in college.
Weren't you like
In college?
Yeah, I did the decathlon
Oh, for who?
for Lock Haven University.
Oh, that's big wrestling school.
Yeah, huge, yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. Give me some number that I would know. Like, what's your best 100 meters?
My best 100 was 10.9
That's
in
fast.
college.
That's fast as shit, man.
My best high jump was
That's
6'6".
so good.
So I was a completely different body.
Yeah, but that explosiveness, man.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't be some grindy squatter where you're like, you should either hit them or miss them, and that's kind of how I was.
Okay.
Like Chris can tell you, it looks like I'm going along fine, like boom, boom,
Right.
and then I just hit a wall and miss one. From your sprinting background, I would guess that's probably how you'll be, or like you'll be benching. Like I'm always like,
Yeah,
and then I'll throw one to here, and it's just stuck.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm Logan. I'm 25. I've been lifting since I was in about 8th grade, probably. I always trained, to be an athlete. I played football and wrestled, and when I was done playing football in college, I still had that desire to compete.
Who'd you
So
play
I
for?
I played for Gettysburg College.
Nice, they recruited me. Yeah.
It's a good school.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah. Yeah, I like that little school. Anyway.
So the powerlifting, I just kind of like, it was always a struggle between being strong and being athletic, because I like doing both, but now I kind of just get to focus on the strength thing, and the competitions kind of scratch that itch a little bit
Yeah.
to compete.
I know, man, it's tough when you've been in athletics. You want to have something to. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. What position were you? Pretty short.
yeah, I played a stand-up D end, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. All right. And I know these two. I'll tell you guys just a little bit about me, but you don't really care that much. I've coached Vicky off and on for a number of years. I don't take any credit for her success. She's one of the better female deadlifters that I've ever worked with. I think she's got a 405 in her if she doesn't get too old before that happens.
Hey, I'm trying for the end of the year if I don't get another injury.
Yeah,
It's a
but
stretch,
she's a
but-
really great deadlifter with really great form, and I'll probably have her demo some deadlifting later if you guys haven't had a chance to watch her deadlift. I just like just about everything about her deadlift. And we'll probably have Chuck demo some benches.
Bench,
because
yeah.
I don't know too many 500 benchers. Although I did see, years and years ago, I saw James Henderson, his nickname was Hollywood, at the USPF Nationals in 1996. It's an equipped meet. He did it raw and benched 705, and it was clean as shit. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. But anyway, I'm 53 now. I have a sports background, just football. But I wanted something, so I started powerlifting, and I powerlifted off and on for damn near 30 years. Mostly local and regional, but I did AAU nationals a few times, and I even won it one year. But my total was in the 1600 range at 198 or 220. And oddly, when I went up in body weight, my total didn't improve that much. My deadlift stayed the same, or even went down a little bit. I think most of the weight went into my fat belly and made it more difficult to set up. But my squat and bench were a little better at 220 than they were at 198. I was coached by a guy named Marty Gallagher that you guys might have heard of, but maybe not because you're pretty young. But Marty was sort of a guru. He was involved with Kirk Karwoski's training and Ed Code's training. We're probably the two greatest powerlifters ever. I'm not anywhere not near like those guys, no one is. But he just happened to live up the street from where I worked. And I found him in the damn phone book and started going to his house. I literally called every Gallagher. Like, are you the Marty Gallagher that writes for Powerlifting USA? He's like, what? Hang up on me. And I found him and I went over to his house and he was like, come over and start training over here. And he was sort of past it. Marty was probably about my age when I met him. So it's not like he had a bunch of elite lifters coming around anymore. So I think he was happy to work with me. If he ever sees this and he sees me, he's calling past it at 53. He's gonna that'll be the end of that. But he won 3 IPF world titles as a masters lifter. So just a really great lifter, 750 deadlifter. That was at 220. So anyway, that's just a little bit about me. I write articles for a couple different magazines on training, spend my time helping other people because at this point in my life at 53, it almost just feels dangerous to go super heavy. I think I'll probably compete one more time with the goal of, Chris wants me to hold that squat now because that's one I quad. So I think I'm just 501 squat, that's metric, 600 pull, and like a 365 bench, and that would be good enough for me at 53. And I think I can hit those numbers without killing myself. So that's where I am at this stage of my life, but I mostly just like helping other people at this point. That feels safe with me. My idea was to go like through your whole soup to nuts training, starting with warm-ups, because that's the first thing you do when you come in the gym. And if anything is boring and you don't want to cover it, we'll do tons of hands-on stuff. I want to more react to what I see you guys doing than just stand here and talk. So I want to watch you guys lift and point out things I think maybe you can improve about your technique. Technique is huge in lifting. You can only get so strong, but I've seen guys literally put in the neighborhood of 150 pounds on their total in a few weeks just by cleaning up their technique. I mean, you can figure 25, 30 pounds on your bench out of improved technique, and 50 to 75 each on your squat and deadlift. Depending, if your technique's already really good, then maybe you might not get that much out of it. But if your technique is rough, like I've heard yours is, like you might instantly be a lot better just by fixing your technique and having somebody look at you.
Yeah.
It'll be one of those ones that
Yeah.
gets that
Yeah.
huge
Yep,
jump.
gets that jump.
Yeah.
Because
So.
look at your bench already getting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but the thing I want to say about warming up, now you guys are all pretty young. What's the oldest in the room? 31? 32?
41.
So, but it will, and if you're
43.
Right. And it will start catching up with you a little bit when you get over 30, and then definitely when you get toward 40. I used to just walk in the gym. I'll be like, the walk from the parking lot to the squat rack is my warm up. Now let's start loading. 1 red, 2 reds, 3 reds. Those reds are 25 kilos, so you're at 385 with 3 of them, and that's your third set. And that's literally what I would do to warm up. I trained with Tony Harris a little bit in Hawaii, and Tony would literally jump a red each side till he was at like 6 of them. So he's up around 7, and calling that his warm up. But when I was younger, I would kind of walk from the car to the squat rack, do a little whatever, something like this, and start squatting. As I got older, I needed a little bit more in terms of warm-ups. And Chris and I had a gym together for a while. This is Christina, my wife now. We got married 2 weeks ago. And she's a little kettlebell guru. She also competed with me one time and squatted like 210 at 110 body weight. But we had a little standardized warm-up we did with the clients at our gym. And I'm not going to teach you guys that today, but I'm just going to mention those stock warm-ups and say that I think something like that can be a good starting point. If you're like, I don't know how to warm up, well, just go look up the Joe DeFranco
I still do your
Big
warm-up.
12, Big 11, something like that.
Yeah, I still do the same one from the gym.
And I could send it to these guys after.
I mean, I have it written down if they want it.
Yeah.
That's how I do it.
Yeah. So what I'll say is, if you're struggling with, and keep it to 10 minutes or less. That's my rule on warm-ups. You warm up for more than 10 minutes, that just became your whole damn workout. So, and then if you need some other little extra stuff as you're going through, okay, fine, stretch your lats or something if something feels a little good. 10-minute warm-up and get to it. If you start with one of those things, fine. When we get to our benching, I put that incline bench out right there for a reason. There are a couple little things you can do on an incline bench that I think are really good for warming up your shoulders to bench. But start maybe with one of those stock warm-ups and then refine it from there. I would never just tell somebody, I mean, if it works for you,
I
that's
cut
great.
out some of the stuff, right, like I
Yeah.
cut stuff out that doesn't work for me, but
Yeah.
it's the same basic thing that we've been doing since
Yeah.
before.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it
what I,
works.
what I thought I would do instead of just like teach you guys a stock warm up, I thought I would just mention a couple of things that work really well. But I'm gonna save the bench stuff for right before we actually bench. Just remind me to come back to it, Vicky. So I think we're gonna squat first in this. And first I'm gonna teach you guys about bracing. But yeah, that's gonna get me sometime today. So I think we'll just do a couple of the warm-up things that I think are particularly good for squatting, just to show you guys and see what you think of them. But it's very individual. You know what gives you problems. Like, my knees are always pretty good. They don't give me, even with the torn quad, my knees don't, they don't give me any problems. I can pretty much, at any time, just sit down into a deep squat and I feel pretty good. But my lower back is a problem. I've had a number of lower back injuries. So I do some things to just try to get a little blood into my lower back and whatnot. You have to figure that out for yourself. There's no way I can tell you, concentrate more on this when you warm up, unless I see something when you're lifting that looks really tight. I'll be like, you gotta get that a little more mobile in order to get in the right positions. Also, this mobility for mobility's sake shit that's been a trend for a couple of years. Knees over toe. He has some pretty cool stuff.
He does have cool.
But if you can get into position for the lifts you want to do, I think that's mostly good enough. I'll tell you one quick story before we actually do some warm-up stuff. A few years ago, I got it in my head that there was something wrong with me because I couldn't touch my hands behind my back. I can't come close. This is it today, at whatever age I am. So I started doing this shit with towels and broomsticks and all this stuff to try and improve my shoulder mobility. And I got my shoulders so jacked up that I couldn't bench or really overhead press for like 6 months. All in the name of what? Nothing was wrong. I was benching fine before that. I just read this shit about mobility, thought I had some imaginary deficiency, and went off on this tangent that caused me all kinds of trouble. So you want to improve your mobility a little bit? Fine, do that. Just don't go crazy with it and get yourself hurt so that you can't train, okay? So let's take a look at a couple little things that I might recommend before somebody squat. All right, the most basic thing is, and you guys can try this. In fact, I would recommend that you try something like this. So one of the most basic things is, I think we call it, probably can't see me, Chris. I think we call it a frog squat. And if you can't do a frog squat with a reasonably flat back and get your chest out a little bit, I would say you need to work on it, because that means you can't get into position for a very good squat. So what that looks like is, I just grab my toes. Now I get in a squat stance with my toes pointed out a little bit, and I grab my toes, and at this point I don't care what my back looks like. I'm all rounded and jacked up and whatever, but I'm just gonna pull myself down into position into a squat. And then as I get into position, I'm gonna push out with my elbows against my knees, and now I'm gonna flatten my back out. And that looks a little more decent. And then I'm just gonna do a few of those and sort of just like run through that range of motion and try to improve it each time. And you'll feel a little hamstring stretch at the top, little glute, and then back down into the stretch. And you don't want to hold those stretches for long. This is mobility stuff. So you use the movement to sort of improve your positioning. Let me just watch you guys do a couple of those, if you don't mind. See if we got anybody that's totally jacked up. And it'll probably feel kind of rough at first. That looks good. Stick that chest out a little bit in the bottom. So when you're down here and you're pushing out, stick your chest out a bit.
So are you letting go of your toes at that point?
You can at that point. Yeah, some people can keep a hold of them. Yeah.
You can keep holding with that.
Let me see a couple of those. Yeah. Sit down in there just a little bit more. Jared?
Yeah.
Yeah. And push out on those knees with your elbows, guys. We just see a couple more of those. That's a good little thing for warming up. All right, you guys look pretty good with that. So just file that away in the back of your minds as something to do, maybe 10 reps of before you squat. Another one that I like before squatting that kind of gets a little bit of everything all at once. What is that walkout thing called, Vicky?
World's greatest? The
Well,
stretch?
we'll call it that.
This one? That?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I call that something different on my
Superman
little...
stretch, maybe?
No?
I call it the world's greatest.
All right, so anyway, here's what we're going to do. And you guys can just watch for the moment. So first thing you're going to do is walk out into a push-up position. Okay, kind of a narrow push-up. Don't get your hands way out there. Then you're going to pick a side and step up beside your pinky on that side. Now, some of you won't be able to get all the way up there at first, but that's okay. So I'm going to step up right next to my pinky. Okay. Now I'm going to use this elbow to push out a little bit, just like I was doing on the frog squat. Then I'm going to reach up for a little thoracic extension, and then I'm going to reach through. And here's what I'm horrible at. I've seen people be able to reach way through, touch their elbow to the ground, all this stuff. That's all I got. I feel a really hard stretch, and then I step back here, come back other side. Step up by my pinky, push out a little bit, reach up, reach through. That's one rep of that. I usually do 5 of those. So then when I say 5, I mean 5 each side. That would be before, both of these two would be before squatting or deadlifting. I'll do that little frog squat thing, and I'll do a few of these things. So if you guys are up for it, let's try a couple of those and see how they feel. I'll coach you through them. We can all do it at the same time. So everybody walk out into that push-up. Now, pick a side and step up by your pinky. Yep, good. Push out with that elbow against the inside of that knee. Push out a little bit and get a little stretch. Good. Reach straight up, reach for the ceiling with that same hand. Good, good. Foot flat, Caleb, if you can. Jared, there we go. Reach through now, guys. Good. Hey, it's okay. That's yes. Somebody that's as bad as me. All right, now put that hand down. Back to the push-up position. If you need to rest for a second, rest. Now you're going to step up next to the other pinky. Push out. Good. Reach up. Good. You guys are pretty good. Reach through. Back beside the back down on the floor. Step back. Good. You guys, at 1 rep's enough. There are all kinds of grunting.
I felt that.
That was good.
Yes.
That was good. So honestly, compared to what you might already be doing, if you guys were to go on that treadmill over there and just walk for 5 minutes to get a little blood flow and maybe get your heart rate up just a little bit, and then do those 2 things, that would be probably better than what a lot of you guys are doing to warm up before you squat now. And that involves a lot of the key areas that you use when you're squatting. The other thing I might recommend is some kind of unweighted single leg thing. And I know, when you squat, you're grounded and you're using both legs in a coordinated fashion, but sometimes I think like a knee hug into a lunge, a few of those before you squat can help just to make sure everything's firing right. I think that's, there might be specific things. You got anything you love, Vicky, to warm up for squatting?
I always did band with the knees.
That is a good one. I bet we don't have the little band, do we?
Right.
Oh, we do. So, and I do this before I squat. Now, this stuff you used to hear about, I'll tell you guys, I know y'all don't know Marty, but he's the funniest guy ever, and I hope you'll look him up later. We would do seminars together, and he had heard the term gluteal amnesia somewhere. And so anytime anybody had a problem with anything, he started, and I know he was fooling around, he started attributing it to gluteal amnesia. And I don't even know if he knew what that term meant, but it has to do with supposedly your glutes not firing correctly. Now, if your glutes aren't firing, you can't fucking walk.
Yeah.
So, I'm pretty sure that's not true. But after you sit around all day, don't move or do anything, I do feel like your posterior chain, your backside can be a little like not very responsive to training at first. That doesn't mean it's not firing, but it might be asleep in a sense. So what I have folks do, and I do like this one, I probably like this one as much or more than the two that I just showed you. So I have people put a band around their ankles and just get in an athletic stance and do a little bit of shuffling back and forth. So you'll go a few steps one direction, and then a few steps back the other direction, maybe 10, 12 steps each way. And you'll really feel that in your ass, I'm telling you. You will. And then I have people pull this thing up over their knees and just squat and push out on it. So now this band's a little, Vicky's worn it out a bit, but some of these bands will really want to force your knees in, and you want to resist that and push out against the band and just sit down there good. And I think that's a good addition, Vicky, to some stuff like that.
Yeah.
You'll really feel both of those in your butt, and you'll feel, then I take that thing off and I do a couple squats, and they feel so much nicer, so much better. I'm going to mention one more that I need a light dumbbell for this one.
How light?
Like a 20, Vicky.
There's a 15. Oh.
So I'm going to mention one more that you guys might want to do. Have you, any of you guys on Instagram? I fucking hate social media, but I do my best to tolerate it, and there is some good information out there. So there's this guy, I think his name's Aaron Hortzig or
Squat
something.
University.
The Squat University guy. And do you not like him, Vicky?
He's good. He just basically recycles stuff that makes it his own. He just
Yeah.
passes it off like he's a genius.
Well, that's what I do. But he has this thing he does that's simpler than all this stuff before he squats. And I think he does it with a kettlebell, but this is fine. And literally, you just take this thing, we okay here, Chris? And you sit down into your squat. Maybe you could probably have some, now that I'm feeling this, you could have something a little heavier than this. It's actually easier to do this type of kettlebell squat than a regular squat because the counterbalance helps you sit down. But you just sit down, push out, and then he has people just move around down here, back and forth, get that knee way out over the toe, get out here laterally a little bit, and just get very comfortable in the bottom. You know, when we're babies, we all can, little babies, they can just sit down here like this all day. You watch a baby pick something up, they don't bend over to get it, they squat down. But so you want to just make sure you're comfortable in the bottom and almost have a little bit of range of motion in reserve for when you do squat. You're never going to squat this deep, but if you miss one, you might have to go a little deeper than you want to put it on the safety. So just a little bit of this, you can kind of come up halfway, back down, do some full squats. I think this can be a really useful part of your warm-up for squatting. But you do those 4 or 5 things, frog squats, the walk out to the rotation, the 2 banded things I showed you, and a few of those. That's a pretty decent warm-up for squatting. So what I want to do at this point, you guys got any questions about warming up? I think we can wrap up the warm-up section.
I just have one question, just because it affects me like a lot. So like 6 months ago, I failed on a squat. I remember the one time, and I got way too deep, and I said something like my IT band or something like that. And I've always tried to stretch it out and try to make it like super warm and everything. And
Yeah.
at our meet, I would always roll it out, and it would like go away, and then I'd be able to squat again. But like those things right there, that would definitely like warm up that area. That's the only part for some reason when I squat or deadlift. If that is not warmed up enough, like I almost like can see myself. Like I don't go up straight. It's almost
Oh,
like I go
yeah.
on the side.
I've seen people shift. Show me exactly where you feel it.
It's like
In your glute or in
somewhere.
your-
It's like somewhere here, but like so the hips right here. So somewhere in like this general area, like
Yeah.
somewhere in there. I don't know.
So I would guess, and I'm gonna let Vicky answer if she wants to, but a lot of that stuff through here, I'm just guessing is probably referred from your lower back, possibly.
Either that or
Uh,
glute med is weak and
yeah.
high T band's kicking on to compensate,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
depends on how a hip shift is often
Right.
a weakness in the hip, or
Yeah.
like you said, some low back.
So maybe some specific accessory
Yeah, I
work
just
to
want to see.
address
I would-
that.
Yeah, we
would
just
help.
I would test the muscles to see which ones.
Yeah.
Like if there's an asymmetry on one side versus the other.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I will say a lot of people have low back problems who try to lift heavy, and I've had my share as well. There are a couple of resources that I'm gonna refer you guys to. These things will be on the tape, maybe you can watch it later or something, but there's a back guru guy named Stuart McGill, and he made a series of videos. Well, he's done a few he wrote a book with Brian Carroll, an elite powerlifter, called Gift of Injury, really good book, and he did a series of videos with the powerlifter Chris Duffin on lower back health. That's Stuart McGill. And then there's another guy named, well, it's an older thing, the McKenzie method for treating your lower back. And this guy has one simple exercise for your lower back, and it's called a press up. And you're on the floor in a push-up position, and you just leave your hips on the floor relaxed and do a little push-up. And what he says that does, and I'm no expert on this stuff, but I think he says most disc bulges are posterior, and this sort of encourages those discs to not bulge in that direction, I think is the theory behind it. But all I know is if I have a little pain in my lower back, when I do those, it'll centralize toward the middle. And in that book, he says that's a good thing. You want that pain to centralize and then eventually go away. But that's a tester for me. If I'm doing these press-ups and they hurt, there's pain with that, I know that's a day I gotta maybe go a little lighter on my squats or just be real careful as I warm up and get into it slowly. But so right now I'm doing these press-ups, and everybody's range of motion will vary. I have my hands out here. I've seen guys that can put their hands way in here and still press all the way up. But right now I'm doing these pain-free and even discomfort-free. So that's a pretty good tell for me that today, as long as I'm prudent with my weight selections and everything, today might be a good day for my squat. But I would say, do some of those press-ups if your back is bothering you, and look at some of that McGill stuff for back health. There's a McGill Big 3 of daily exercises for the lower back that he says to do. And maybe we'll reserve that if we have time at the end. I'll go over the McGill Big 3. I don't do them every day. At my age, I probably should be doing them every day, but and it will take you about 10 minutes. But for most any lifter, the two big problem areas are either going to be shoulders or lower back. You have some other things that bother you from time to time, elbows, hips, knees a little bit, but almost everybody is going to have a tweaked lower back or a dodgy shoulder at some point in their lifting career. So somebody remind me at the end, we'll check out the McGill Big 3. Any other warm-up questions?
So you wouldn't touch weight until you do all that stuff? You wouldn't put like 135 on it?
I wouldn't. I do maybe 5 minutes on the treadmill, just a light walk,
Okay.
and I'd pick 3 to 5 little mobility things to do, and then I'd get into the weights.
Okay.
But man, I'm talking, so that is a reduced version of the thing. I'm talking with the treadmill walk. So 5 minutes of treadmill walking and 5 minutes of that stuff I just showed you,
Yeah.
and then into your weights. Not like 5 minutes on the treadmill and 10 minutes of that, and now you've blown 15 minutes, and you got a family and a wife and a dog to walk and all this stuff. But yes, to answer your question briefly, I would not touch a weight until I did some general warm-up thing, rope skipping, bike, treadmill, something like that, just to get a little blood flow, and then some more specific mobility work for the lifts I was gonna be doing. And then I'd probably start from, like, if I squat an empty bar, it feels terrible, it feels awkward. You almost have to have a little bit of weight on there. So then I would start loading my squats progressively to warm up from there. Okay? Anybody need a drink of water or anything real quick?